Hearty welcome to all the participants who have joined. Respected resource person, Miss Vantana Maudgil, Biju sir, and all. A very important topic nowadays. Schooling, we are facing a lot of attention issues. So the attention equation is here. Thanks to Miss Vantana. Well, the students processing the information nowadays is quietly different from what we were doing in the classrooms. And ever since the pandemic, the attention span has also decreased, that everybody knows. So Ms. Vandana has gone through certain surveys and statistics, and has come up with classroom tools and solutions so that the attention span can be, the maybe 5 to 10 minutes span of nowadays can be very well utilized, and the classroom managed can be very effective. So once again, I welcome each and everyone. I request Mr. Biju S. Pillai to introduce Ms. Vantana through a short video. Vantana ma'am, all the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Over to Biju sir.
Ms. Vandana Maudgil, a dedicated educator with a master's degree in English and certification in NLP, has over 14 years of experience and currently serves as the headmistress at GD Goenka Public School. A lifelong learner, she is committed to creating safe, positive, and supportive learning ecosystems that foster academic excellence, holistic development, and life skills. Her leadership emphasizes continuous professional development for teachers and a nurturing environment where students thrive in academics, sports, music, and the arts. Guided by her clarity of purpose and passion for transformation, Ms. Maudgil is shaping future-ready individuals and driving meaningful change in the education sector. Hearty welcome, Ms. Vandana. Please proceed. The stage is yours.
Yeah, is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, yes, very good, very good.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today and taking time out for this very important topic. Supporting students when attention is hard. So, before I begin, I would like to start with a very, very, very small reflection activity. I want you to think about yesterday, maybe today evening, or maybe you can just take a moment and think about any particular event when you find it hard to focus. Maybe during this meeting, also while reading something or while completing any work. Am I audible? Am I visible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Just think about one moment, one activity, or one event when you really found that, yes, focusing on something is really hard. You may also silently reflect on these questions, that what distracted you? Were you all really tired or stressed or overwhelmed? Or what helped you regain your focus? I hope these things of situation comes in everybody's life, right? So if you're comfortable, you all may type one word in the chat box describing what distracts you the most. Anybody would like to mention in the comment box what distracts you the most? It is sometimes a tiredness, sometimes you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed about anything, or you are not able to focus, maybe of any reason. Anybody would like to ask, mention in the chat box?
So many remarks are there, like discipline and distraction, noisy environment,
Okay, I'm not able to
and
see, I think.
couldn't focus on the assessment due to people talking around me. Yeah,
Okay.
stressed.
So thank you so much everybody for sharing. So this basically small activity reminds us of something very important, that attention is not just a student challenge, right? It is a human brain experience. And this is what today's session is exactly about. Instead of asking why students do not focus, we'll explore here today what makes attention difficult and how teachers can spot it effectively. So let us all begin by first of all understanding that what is attention. So what according to you is attention really? Anybody would like to mention what is attention? The concentration of the children has reduced, concentration and listening, yes. Concentration, attention is concentration, focus, focus on something. Thank you so much for sharing these answers, not deviating, right? And how many of you think that attention is basically the behavior problem? Attention is basically the behavior problem. Is attention related to our behavior? Type yes or no in chat box. Yes, everybody is mentioning yes, yes, to an extent, yes, 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 okay. So let us, it is one among, yes, okay. So let us understand now what is attention. See, attention is something which is often misunderstood as behavior or willingness, right? However, attention is actually a brain function that influence that is influenced by majorly multiple factors. So one major factor here is emotional safety. So one is attention is not a behavior problem, it is a function of the brain that actually reflects whatever activities we are doing. So the first major factor is the emotional safety. What happens is when students feel respected and connected with their teachers, their brain feels safe and becomes ready to learn. And sometimes what happens is when students feel judged or their brain shifts into survival mode, making focus difficult. For example, if a student gives a wrong answer and is correctly or harshly laughed at, right? The student may stop raising their hand in the future, not because they do not know the answer, but because they fear embarrassment. So this is one of the major factor that why the student loses attention in that particular thing. Next is the cognitive load. Cognitive load means working memory capacity matters, right? So what happens is every student has a limited memory capacity. Okay. So when too much of information is presented at once, the brain becomes overloaded and attention naturally drops here. So for instance, what happens is if a teacher gives several instructions together, right? Writing notes, drawing a diagram, and solving questions simultaneously, many students may forget steps or sometimes feel confused also because their brain is trying to process, but they're not able to process that too much of information at one time. Next is the physical environment. So, physical environment also affects attention sometimes. So, what happens is noise, lighting, seating arrangement, and visual clutter can either support or disturb the concentration level. For example, a child sitting near a noisy door or a child sitting near a distracted window may repeatedly lose his or her focus because they are uninterested, but because this surroundings keeps pulling their attention away. So the physical environment is one of the most important factor that makes the concentration or that makes the attention deviation. Interest and motivation here also plays a very strong role as well. Students naturally focus better when learning feels meaningful and relatable to them. So, for example, here, if you are teaching fractions through textbook problems, it may not engage students very well. But what happens is, when we connect it with pizza or when we connect it with chocolate, often it increases what? It increases the curiosity, it increases the participation, because students relate learning to real life well. Finally, it is all about the development stage that determines our attention span. Expectations must align with age and cognitive memory as well. For example, expecting a younger children to sit quietly and listen for long periods usually leads to restlessness. So, whereas older students may be able to manage longer and independent tasks or more concentration and may participate more in discussions. So, what happens is, when we understand that attention depends on all these factors, we begin to see that attention challenges are not simply behavioral tasks, right? So, to understand this more, let us look today at the brain framework, that how our brain is directly intervening here and focus on our attention pattern. I hope I'm clear here. Anybody has any doubts or anything anybody would like to ask? Can I move on?
Yes, I think it's clear.
Okay, thank you. Next is, can you all see that brain framework? B stands for biological here, R stands for relationship, A is academic load, I is instruction style, N is nervous system state. So let us just understand what is the brain framework and how it helps in focusing and having attention. So first factor is biological factor. Students may struggle sometimes due to lack of sleep, maybe poor nutrition, maybe a child is ADHD, or some or the other sensory processing differences also. So what happens is, these conditions directly affects our brain functioning and concentration also. The second is the relationship. Now, in the previous slide also we spoke about that how relationship matters here. Students who feel disconnected from the teachers or fearful or may understand any kind of a failure often struggles to get engaged. So a strong teacher student connection always builds trust, which supports attention. Third factor is the academic load. So when tasks are easy, students become bored. And when tasks are too difficult, students feel overwhelmed. So both situations here reduce the engagement of the child. The fourth factor here is instructional styles. Lessons that rely only on the passive listening skills to maintain the attention. So, students require varied and interactive teaching approaches here. The fifth factor is nervous system state. Nervous system state says it is all about stress, it is all about anxiety, all about emotional regulations, make focusing extremely difficult because the brain prioritizes safety over learning. When the brain is not feeling comfortable, the brain does not allow, or our nervous system does not allow to focus. Understanding these influences shifts our thinking from blame behavior to understanding students' need. So once we understand that what is the brain framework, we will be all able to understand that how our thinking pattern works and how the attention is can be improved hereupon. So neuroscience strongly suggests this kind of perspective before they come to any kind of the conclusion. this is all about the neuroscience. So what is neuroscience and what neuroscience tells us? Neuroscience basically tells us that attention depends on certain skills, and that are all executive functions. These skills help child manage learning and manage behavior also. So these skills help children remember instructions, control their actions, and adjust things whenever the things are becoming the challenge. So, for example, what happens is when a teacher gives three instructions together, right? And child forgets one step, it may not mean the child is careless. Sometimes we understand that, okay, fine, the child is not listening to us and the child is careless. But at the same time, the neuroscience says that it may relate to something else and the child might not be careless. It means the child is finding it difficult to hold that particular information in their mind at the same time. Similarly, what happens is when a student speaks without raising their hands or struggle to sit quietly, this happens often in the class. When we ask any question to any child, they will react and they will answer promptly, right? They do not want to raise their hands also, and they will just speak whatever they want to. So here it is again, we think that it is a misbehavior, but sometimes the child is still learning how to control the impulses and how to control those kind of emotions, because that child does not actually know how to control his emotions here. And another important neuroscience is that brain is flexible. Our brain is growing every time, and it has the capacity that is called neuroplasticity. It simply means that students can improve attention over time if they receive the right support. Just like muscles become stronger with practice, so brain skills also become stronger with repeated learning experiences. So often teachers see these as distractions or maybe impulsive behaviors and assume students are not trying. But neuroscience helps us understand that students may actually be struggling with developing brain skills and needs guidance here. See, now we'll just understand the comparison between how a teacher thinks in the class and how a neuroscience thinks. See, what teachers see versus what neuroscience reveals. Anybody would like to read about that? What teachers often see and what neuroscience reveals? Okay, what teachers often see is teachers often notices behavior like student is a lazy student, careless student, distracted, or sometimes even defiant when they lose attention. Many times these students behavior become unintentional. But what neuroscience reveals, but what research reveals us, that these behaviors are often not about attitude, they are connected how the brain is functioning at that particular moment. So student may be struggling with remembering instructions, managing emotions, or processing information at a different speed. So when teachers shift from judging behavior, here the role of the teacher is very important, because when teacher shifts from judging behavior to understanding what might be happening inside the child's brain, the responses becomes calmer, more supportive, and more effective. So now we'll just take one challenge, that is behavior or brain challenge, right? This is situation one. Now I would like all of you to come up and give me the answers for this and let me know that is this a behavior challenge or a brain challenge? A child keeps forgetting homework instructions even after listening carefully. What is this challenge? Is this a behavior problem? This is a brain challenge. This is a brain challenge. Yes. I'm really happy I'm halfway and everybody has really understood that this is not a behavior and this is a brain challenge which the children are facing when we talk about attention. Yes, we often misinterpret it as a careless attitude, but what happens is this is a memory challenge only. Thank you so much for your responses. Now, next situation comes. A student suddenly gets angry or shuts down when corrected. A student suddenly gets angry or shuts down when corrected. It is a behavior or a brain challenge? Again, I'm getting the responses. Yes, it is a brain challenge. Behavior, brain challenge. Okay, behavioral, behavior. See, again, teachers misinterpret it as a disrespect, but it is again emotional regulation difficulty of a child. So it is again a brain challenge, not a behavior challenge. Coming to the third situation. A child takes more time than others to complete work. It is a behavior challenge or a brain challenge. Yes. Behavior, brain challenge. Yes, it is again a brain challenge because this could be a different processing speed of a child, not laziness. We call it laziness sometime. A teacher labels a child or a tag a child with saying that the child is lazy, but that is a different processing speed of each and every child here. So anybody would like to reflect on this small activity which we have done right now? What was the understanding after doing this activity? See, when we start looking, here the point is whenever we start looking behavior with curiosity, right, instead of being judgment, we understand our students better and responds more thoughtfully. So here the point is that we should all be thoughtfully listening and thoughtfully understanding what might be the pattern. Is it actually a behavior challenge or is it a brain challenge here?
Ms.
So
Vandana,
to help
Ms.
teachers,
Vandana, Ms. Vandana, Mr. Jadhav
yes, sir.
wants to reflect upon it.
Yes, sir, please.
Mr. Jadhav, you can speak.
Mr. Jadhav.
Ma'am, yeah, with this activity, we can understand that sometimes we misinterpret the behavior of students if they are not doing their homework or postponing, or sometimes they are forgetting. We as a teacher, we as they are not completing, they are being lazy, but we need to understand their point of view, why the student is lagging behind. And with this activity, we learned that uh, there may be some brain challenge behind those activities which he is not completing home, or he is sounding disrespectful. We need to understand that and think in a positive way and counsel the student. That's what we need to do as a teacher.
Very rightly said, very rightly, sir. Because it is all about how we interpret the situation and how we work upon that. And all the behavior issues are not behavior issues. It can be the brain challenge too. So first, we should all be identifying whether what kind of a issue is that, whether that attention problem is behavior or brain, and then we should be acting upon it. Thank you so much for such a wonderful answer, sir. And now coming to that, to help teachers to understand it practically, educators here should use a simple and powerful framework called the focus model. Now we'll be talking more about the focus model here. Teachers' framework for attention support. F here is frame the task, right? So large instructions, basically what happens is large instructions whenever we are giving should be broken into smaller, into achievable steps so that students do not feel overwhelmed at all. For example, instead of saying complete the worksheet, draw the diagram and answer the questions, a teacher can guide students step by step by first asking them to complete the question, then check the understanding of that question, and then move to the next task. This reduces confusion and helps students stay focused. Next is organize the environment. What happens here is displaying a daily schedule right on the board helps the student to organize the environment. Suppose a child knows what is coming next. Similarly, if you have seen in your class boards also, there are teachers who are always mentioning about the entire day structure, so that helps a child to organize the environment and organize themselves also, so that really rebuilds the focus of each and every child in the class. Third is connect emotionally. Students basically respond better to correction when they feel emotionally supported. For example, instead of saying, "Why are you not paying attention?" a teacher can always say, "I notice you seem distracted today. Is everything okay? Let me help you get started." When students feel understood, they are more likely to re engage with learning. So, words play a major role here. The vocabulary we use, the words we use, whatever we are talking with the child matters matters a lot here whenever we try to connect the child with emotionally. Next is use multi-sensory teaching. Incorporating visuals, movements, and discussion activities, multiple brain areas, and strengthens engagement. For example, while teaching multiplication, what happens is instead of only explaining verbally, a teacher can use counters, a teacher can use group activities, visual charts, or body movements like clapping rhythms, etc. And when students see, when students hear, they do all these kind of learning activities, their attention naturally improves. Next is S, that says supports re-engagement. Losing attention is natural, right? Teachers must guide students to return to the class, to return to focus without any kind of a fear or without any kind of embarrassment also. For instance, if a student is distracted, right, a teacher can gently go to the desk, tap the desk, make eye contact, or quietly remind the student instead of calling them out publicly, right? Teachers can also use short reset activities like stretching, breathing to help students regain focus back to the class. And believe me, whenever teacher applies these strategies of focus framework, they create classrooms where attention is supported rather than forced. And to apply this model effectively, teachers must also understand how lesson design influences student attention. So, right now, till now, we have all learned about the brain framework, and then we have understood that how this focus framework basically helps in focusing and making sure that the children are attentive in whatever they are doing. But next part is, whenever we are planning a lesson, that should also be organized in a way or designed in a way that children should be more focused. Now, coming for designing for attention. This is cognitive load theory practice. This is in psychology, we say that there is a practice called cognitive load theory that has three parts, right? One is the extraneous, second is the intrinsic, and third is the germane. So, along with lesson designing classroom structure, another very powerful factor that supports here is extraneous. So, what happens here is, whenever we have anything that is
You're on mute.
sorry. Hmm. Hello, am I audible? Yes.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so our brain works basically like a small working space. So if too much of information is given together, the brain becomes overloaded and students naturally lose attention. So this is not because they are unwilling to learn, but because their brain is trying to manage too many things at once. So there are three types of learning loads basically that affects our attention. The first is the intrinsic load. This means basically that the natural difficulty level of the topic. We know that, okay, that topic like division or solving word problems might be naturally difficult. So so that is quite normal here, right? Next is the extraneous load. This happens basically when students feel confused because instructions are either not clear, instructions are either long. So here the scaffolding has to be done and the instruction has to be given into smaller parts only. The third is called the germane load. This is the efforts that basically help students understand and connect learning deeply. When teachers use examples, when teachers do discussions or activities that help students make meaning of the topic, students use their mental effort in a very productive way. When this thing is lesson plans are designed, and especially considering the attention of the child, there should be a balance between all these activities. We often see that student is losing attention in the class. So let us now understand some common situations also, why and these things happen and where this is happening. See, now, language and emotional safety. Okay, along with lesson designing, once we have designed the lessons and we know the classroom structure, another very powerful factor that support attention is our emotional safety. Students learn best when they feel safe, when they feel respected, and when they feel understood. When students feel anxious, they are scared of making mistakes, they're worried about being judged, or their brain focuses more on protecting emotions rather than learning something, right? So, one very effective classroom strategy is to build emotional safety, that is the emotional coaching. Here, the first step is emotional coaching that says, suppose you have to tell child to sit properly. So instead of telling the child sit properly, what can we say? What can be said if we want our child to sit properly in the class? If we see the child is restless, if we see the child is not sitting properly, the teacher should first observe. The teacher should see that why is the child confused, why is the child tired, or why is the child feeling overwhelmed, and then she should be calling the child and talking to the child, and maybe use a different kind of vocabulary and not pointing it out publicly. The second step is validating the feeling of any child. Uh, I can see you are frustrated, right? Instead of saying that helps the child, you can again use something else that can really be validated by the child, and it really helps the child here. The third step is emotional language. Many students feel emotions but cannot express them also. So, when teachers help students name their emotions like frustration, like nervousness, or confusion, students learn emotional awareness. Now, the final step is guiding solutions together. Teachers help students explore coping strategies like taking a short pause, asking for help, or breaking tasks into smaller parts. When students feel emotionally safe, their brain becomes ready to learn and focus improves naturally. Multisensory teaching. Anybody would like to understand, and anybody can just comment on what is multisensory teaching? What is multisensory teaching and what it basically involves? Is my voice not audible? Am I not audible?
Yeah, pretty audible.
Because I am seeing in my chat box that they're not able to hear.
No, no, no.
Okay.
Miss Sakya, you have to check your audio.
Yes, it is all about using senses. Right, rightly answered. Sense organs interaction. Using senses, making them understand eye-hand coordination, using various learning strategies like visuals, audio, and other to engage all the teaching with sensory organs, use of senses, visual, kinesthetic. Earlier, many classrooms focused mainly on listening and writing, right? And however, research has shown that when students use multiple senses while learning, attention and understand improve significantly. Multisensory teaching does not mean teaching according to fixed learning styles. Instead, it means presenting information in different ways so that more parts of the brain remains active. So here, talking about the visual strategies includes using more diagrams, using color coding, and graphic organizers. For instance, using colors to highlight key points helps remember students' information easily. Auditory strategies include discussions and verbal explanations. For instance, when students explain answer to their partner, they process information well. So here peer learning helps a lot. Next is kinesthetic strategies include movements and hands-on learning. For example, using blocks to teach multiplication or acting out some of the other stories and help students stay engaged are the examples of some of the kinesthetic strategies. Next is reading and writing strategies includes basically summarizing. It includes labeling diagrams and note making also. So these activities help students organize their thinking pattern. So when students see, when students hear, when students discuss and perform activities together, learning pathways become stronger and attention also improves. So one very powerful part of multisensory learning is movement also, right? Which is directly connected to brain functioning. So let us learn more about movement therapies also. See, movement is these are the movement breaks, right? Movement is oftenly misunderstood as distraction. Whenever a child is moving in the class, we always say that this child does not have the attention and he is distracted in the class. He is just going out, asking for the water, asking for the washroom break. And then we misunderstand again the same thing. But movement is, however, however, brain research has shown that movement actually improves attention. If you will see a little bit movement in the class, right? So can you see the dopamine level in dopamine level in our brain increases by 35%, oxygen supply increases by 25%, and our alertness also increases by 40%. Movement increases dopamine levels, right? Which supports basically motivation. It supports engagement also. It also increases the oxygen supply that helps in the fuel brain function. There are three types of movement breaks basically a teacher can use in the class. I'm not saying that teacher can tell all the children to just move in the class, but here are three types of basically movement breaks. So there is a difference, a thin line between movement and movement breaks. So here we are just talking that movement is definitely a better thing because the research has proved that it helps it helps in enhancing the attention of the child. But movement breaks are very important when as a teacher we are there in the class and when we see that attention is diverting of the children. So let us understand what are these movement breaks a teacher can use. One is the regulation break. Regulation break helps students basically calm down. Okay, so these include deep breathing or stretching. For example, after a stressful activity, a short breathing exercise helps students settle. How many of you actually do all these things in your classes? We think we have a lesson in front of us and we just have to finish our syllabus. But are we really thinking about giving these kind of movement breaks basically to the child so that their attention deepens and their concepts or whatever we are teaching them also deepens within them? These breaks basically help regain alertness. These can include dancing also, these can include jumping also, or quick action games also. For instance, a child, if you see, is sitting for a very long is sitting for a very long time, right? A 1 minute energizer, just a 1 minute energizer helps students regain the focus back. Hmm. Grounding breaks help students feel emotionally balanced. These includes mindful walking or sensory activities like squeezing or stress balls, etc. Movement should not be seen as loss of learning time, dear teachers, right? Instead, it prepares the brain for better learning. However, even with these strategies, teachers must remember that every child is different and may require a different kind of support every time they need the support. I hope I am clear with these moment breaks. If anybody has any question.
Yeah, some comments are there like Zakia Begum says we use attention grabbers, energizers, brain buttons for both dull and hyperactive situations.
Yeah, I'm coming to that also. I'm coming to that point also. Now after this slide, we'll be just talking about, we are talking about the movement breaks, but we all know that we had different kind of children in our class, right? So now we'll be talking about those kind of diverse learners also here. Here we have diverse learners, right? Like ADHD students in our classes, anxiety-driven students in our classes who have too much of anxiety, or maybe a low motivations, a student with a low motivational capacity, right? So we'll be talking here about them. Student with ADHD, right, often benefits from clear visual timers, breaking tasks into smaller steps. They cannot take a task in a one go. Their tasks should be broken into different small steps. Flexible seating options is again an option for them, and frequent check-ins. If we think for an ADHD student, we have given a task and the child will be able to understand the task on their own after giving them a long instructions, we would be mistaken in doing that. Students with anxiety driven inattention requires emotional predictability. Now, what it means basically is they benefit from structured routines. Writing down on a board about whatever is the routine helps them a lot because they have a anxiety within them which is not able to helping them to focus on their present tasks. They benefit from structured routines basically, gentle starting activities, and maybe a private feedback really helps them a lot also. And again, safe space for emotional regulation also. So, for instance, beginning class with a simple warm up activity helps anxious students settle into learning comfortably. Now, another one category is low motivation students. Students with low motivation often disengage when learning feels meaningless to them. They benefit from choice based learning, real life connections, and opportunities to express their ideas. So, for example, allowing students to choose how they present their project increases ownership and attention to them. And when all the teachers understand these kind of different needs, they respond with empathy rather than frustration. And this naturally leads teacher to reframe students' behavior as communication rather than misbehavior. Any doubts here? Can I move on?
Anyone having any doubt, you can ask in the chat box. Otherwise, we can move ahead.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, that's clear.
And this is one of the most important thing we'll be talking about here. That is the behavior reframe. And that is also as per the as per the psychology, it is also called trauma informed lens, right? What happens here is sometimes what happens is teachers see behavior that appear challenging, right? Distraction, laziness, or disruption. Traditionally, these behaviors are seen as discipline issues only. However, trauma informed teaching encourages us to pause and to ask a different question from that. Instead of asking, what is wrong with this child, we begin asking what might this child be experience. And this is the behavior reframe. Very often behavior is basically is a form of a communication, right? For instance, distracted behavior may indicate that student is overstimulated by noise also, overstimulated by crowd also, or emotional stress also. So that can be the reason for getting distracted. Talking about the lazy behavior may actually indicate again overwhelming or maybe lacking scaffolding. A child may appear unwilling to work because the tasks feel too difficult for any child, right? Or the child might feel maybe feeling confused also about that particular topic. And a teacher might think that the child is lazy in the class. Next is disruptive. Disruptive behavior may reflect a need for connection. When students feel unsafe or misunderstood, they may resist instructions as a way to protect themselves. Next is ignoring. Again, if you think the ignoring part is there, the child may be anxious, or the child is not able to process the information, or maybe processing the information slowly. Defiant behavior may be again an emotional protection. When students feel unsafe and again misunderstood, they may resist instruction as a way to protect themselves. Off task, needing movement or sensory inputs also. So when we shift, basically, whenever a teacher shifts the lens from the judgment to understanding the child, the things change, and attention does not remains the problem anymore. But again, whenever we are planning the activities or whenever we are planning anything in the class, it should be all age appropriate strategies, whatever should be planned. So, because every age group has different attention needs and different learning readiness, when teaching strategies, uh, students remain naturally engaged, right? So, students from age 5 to 7 learn best through visual schedules, through frequent movements, through simple choices, through clear expectations. And when talking about 8 to 10-year child, the child benefits from collaborative learning, the child benefits from responsibility building, the child is benefited from group projects, peer discussions, or simply self-check tools that help students stay engaged and take ownership of the learning. And for again 11 to 14 years child, they benefit from goal setting. It helps and they benefit from reflective thinking when we give them the activities that helps them to reflect upon how it had helped them, really helped them a lot, and maybe a kind of independent tasks given to them can help them a lot. And however, what happens basically is when teacher aligns teaching methods with readiness, with development readiness, attention naturally improves. And the another important factor here is supports attention across all age group is predictability. So one last point here is structure and predictability. Whenever we talk about the predictability and structure, it talks about that simple classroom routines, right? That should be all structured and that should all be predictable. Everything cannot be surprise or everything cannot be done on the same day. The way the teachers make their lesson plan, it should be told to the children that whatever we are doing, a very next day, a small hints should be given to them so that they are more attentive in the class and they understand what is happening in the class. For example, sometimes what happens is you can just tell the students, we have 5 minutes left before we move to the next activity, right? So it helps them prepare mentally. They know that this is going to happen and this is the very next step, this is going to happen. So this builds trust between a teacher, between a student, and reduces the classroom anxiety. Now it is talking about re-engagement and reinforcements. It is unrealistic to expect students to remain focused continuously. Now, we have been talking about attention, we have been talking about the focus, but it is unrealistic if we say that every child can remain focused every time. Attention naturally fluctuates, and it happens with us all as well. So it can be an adult, it can be an adult also, it can be in a child also. The real learning skill is returning to focus. Okay, we understood about the brain, we understood about the focus, we understood how and what activities we should be able to incorporate. But again, we should be understanding that focusing is a skill, right? But again, coming back to the focus once we have lost is very, very important, and how important it is to reinforce on these things, and re-engagement is in supporting that particular thing. When non-verbal cues, right, like eye contact, moving closer to the student, or lightly tapping the desks at time, help students refocus without any kind of embarrassment. Reset rituals, right, such as again stretching, deep breathing, or quick desk organization activities help students mentally restart learning. This is one case study. A 3-year-old child noticed a student, right, named Aiden, who appeared constantly distracted. During lessons, he would often share outside the window, fidgeting with objects, or leave tasks incomplete. Initially, it seemed like he was not interested in learning. So instead of labeling Eden as careless or inattentive, the teacher decided to observe him more closely and try to understand what might be making attention difficult for him. See, the challenge, the shift, and the outcome. So here, when the child was not able to focus in the class, what did the teacher do basically? She find out the challenge, then she tried to give the shift to that particular thought process, or maybe a shift to that perspective, and then the outcome was amazing here. And within 3 weeks, Aiden's task completion improved significantly, and more importantly, he became more confident, also asking for help instead of avoiding work. This is again one more case study which has been actually researched upon, that a child noticed, a teacher noticed that a student named Mayank, right, he would completely shut down during maths lessons. He was absolutely fine in all the classes, but when talking about maths lessons, the child was shutting down every time, right? So he would avoid participation, he would avoid writing, and sometimes appear resistant also whenever asked to attempt any kind of a problem. So initially what happened was this behavior like was feeling like lack of interest. However, the teacher chose to look deeper and then recognize that Mayank might be experiencing anxiety related to that particular subject. So here what happens is the teacher began using emotional coaching by gently checking it with Mayank and acknowledging his feelings. She started giving private feedback instead of correcting him publicly. She also created predictable lesson routines. So Maya knew what to expect. So Mayank knew what to expect each day and what to do every other day. So gradually, what happened was Mayank began participating more confidently. He also developed self introspection and started expressing whenever needed and supported and was supported by his teacher. So this example basically reminds us that when students feel emotionally safe, right, they become more willing to engage in learning. So here we have 3 implementation plan for teachers so that they can start implementing it from tomorrow onwards in their classes only and feel the difference. You can all begin by observing when attention drops and when it improves in the class. Then they can select one strategy from focus. I hope I'm clear here. I'm just repeating this. First, just to implement this plan from tomorrow, right? Observe what are the attention triggers in the class. What is making the attention lose and what is making the what is helping you to capture the attention of any child in the class, right? And then once you have noticed, then you have to follow or take one thing from the focus model that we have already seen and do the trial for 2 weeks and you will see the difference. Third, should reflect on students' response also. We should be waiting for student response and modify the strategies accordingly. But remember here, change happens small because consistent efforts rather than large sudden transformations does not really happen. It is a small and the daily effort by the teacher if we really want to change and if we really want to become the catalyst in whatever we are doing. See, what happens is the impact of attention sport. What happens when attention improves? Behavior improves by 47%. Academic performance rises by 62%. Classroom harmony increases by 73%. And again, the teacher stress reduces by 58%. So supporting attention benefits the entire classroom ecosystem. So now, as we come to the closer of the end of this activity, right, as end of this topic, I want all of you to just do this self-reflection activity and understand what can be done and so that we can make difference in our classes. And one thing that should be taken in the classes is that it could be breaking instructions into smaller step. That is very important. It could be giving the moment breaks. It could be responding with emotional support also, or simply observing the behavior with curiosity instead of judgment. So take few seconds, choose whatever you are taking from the focus framework and helping your child, because every child you take creates a safer and more supportive learning space for our children. And sometimes one small change by a teacher can completely change a child's learning journey. So this is once again the focus approach. If you really want to take the click of this picture, you can all take it, because tomorrow onwards, I know everybody of us is starting this and taking one key point from this focus model and doing it in our classes. So this is the closing message from my side, that attention is not demanded, it is designed. So today I tried my best to design attention so that we can understand that power lies with us only, and the best teachers don't just demand attention, they invite it, they nurture it, and celebrate its return. Thank you so much, sir.
Hope it is clear to everybody. If you have any questions or you would like to add on to the points discussed, you are welcome. You can raise your hands, we'll unmute you so that we can also enrich ourselves on this topic. And Vandana ma'am, it was very well illustrated and explained. Thank you so much. Kalpana, Miss Kalpana would like to speak. It seems, Miss Kalpana, you can unmute.
Good evening, sir,
Good evening.
and special thanks to Vandana ma'am. It was really an eye opener. Ma'am, I have one query. This is regarding a child trying to copy during the exam time. So this is a problem. Which is it related to behavior or brain function, and what can we do to discourage that kind of action?
Copying in the exam, right? It is again a stimuli for a child, right? It is again a brain challenge for a child. It is not about the attention, it is just their diversion, whatever is going here. So these things again take time. If we think the same day we'll just guide the children, so it has to be reiterated again and again. Once the child is there in the class, we have to tell them about why of everything, so that it is there in the subconscious of the mind also, and the child understands that whatever he is doing is wrong, or whatever he is doing is right. So he should be understanding the difference between that. Because as a teacher, we are talking a lot about the syllabus basically, right? But we are not talking about all these things. So when the pointers are coming on the same day, okay, and the children generally are not receptive to that particular information and do not take that information really well. So the point here is reiteration at every point, at every moment. So the instructions should not be given just before the exam or just before the tests. I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Yeah, I think it is very clear, but at the same time, it can be a behavioral issue also, right? Because
Uh,
it can be a habit as well.
so
Habit means
behavior,
behavior.
right, sir, right, sir. But behavior issues is basically it is a pattern, but we can end this pattern by working on their neuroscience, by working on breaking those pathways only.
All right. Anyway, as Madam has said, these kinds of challenges need to be addressed individually. And also, instead of addressing publicly, we need to address such challenges very privately. Private conversations will help. Teachers, at the present, classrooms, uh, our, usual lecturing or, kind of, whole class teaching may not help. We have to, bifurcate the points, the concepts and all, and we have to individually cater to the students' needs, because, everybody is spending their time on the screen nowadays. and lots of, visuals, video, and are all stuffed into their brain, and as a result, their memory is getting lost. So we have to be very careful in, giving instructions, work assignments, and all, step by step, as Madam has, pointed out, structured instructions. Not too many instructions together. You have to structure it, and also in between you can give movement breaks. That's a wonderful, tool through which you can gain the attention of the students. Nowadays, 30 minutes or 40 minutes classroom becomes very tedious for children unless and until the class is very interesting. So, any more questions anyone would like to add? They can raise their hands. The certificate link is posted in the chat box. They can fill it. And see, what is up to be appreciated is we have had some 120, participants. They are very keen on learning. That is very well, to be appreciated. So thank you so much, participants, for joining. Your enthusiasm in learning more and more things about the attention equation and all, because we are choosing these kinds of topics because these are very relevant, and all educators, they cannot ignore the present day, alpha generation. So we have to be, updated on all areas, on all aspects. So that's the reason we are coming up with these topics, which may help definitely to, enhance your classroom preparations and transactions. So thank you so much, Ms. Vandana, for your preparation, your presentation. We have very beautifully and very clearly presented the concepts and helped the education, teaching fraternity. Thank you so much once again to all the participants. If you have any queries, please type it in the chat box or raise your hands. Otherwise, we will wind up the session here. The chat box is open to you. And if you have any questions and all, you can type in the chat box or you can raise your hands. Vandana ma'am, thank you so much once again. I
Thank
think
you
you
so much,
can
sir. It
close
is my
the
honor to
screen.
be
Yeah,
here. Thank you,
screen
sir.
must be maybe closed. Yeah, we have closed the screen. Well, I think we can wind up. Thank you so much, everybody. Good
Thank you
night.
so much.
Good night, ma'am. Good night.
Good night, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.